Hello everybody! This video follows up my weekly Substack called Magnetic Masochism, which, funny name, follows up on the idea that very often elite players are willing to suffer in certain positions out of the opening, out of their preparation, as long as they know and they're confident how to make a draw. Let's face it, on elite level, making a draw with black is considered a very good result and very often a desirable one. For the rest of us, this is less so. We usually play in opens and leagues, and basically getting a win with either color is preferable to making a draw, simply because on our level there are many more mistakes made during the games. However, sometimes even for us, it is good to be able to make a draw, especially with the black pieces. And in this game, I would like to describe one such situation where I found myself in. And it was during a team event. Now, at team events, you have this team strategy where normally the players with white try to win and the players with black try to draw, or at least not lose, yeah? So the game I'm going to demonstrate was played at the European Team Championship in Portocarras in 2011, where I was playing for the national team of Macedonia. In round one, the first round of the event, we were paired against the national team of Montenegro. And when the board pairings came out, I saw that I was paired to play Grandmaster Dragiša Blagojević. Now, I've known Dragiša since the 90s, basically, where he was a frequent guest at tournaments in Macedonia, and I've also played him a couple of times prior to this game. I was lucky to beat him in 1998 when I scored my first Grandmaster norm, and then we also had one game where I was black, played in a training match between the teams of Montenegro and Macedonia. That was in 2007. Now, 4 years later, I was to face him with black again. So being a team event, I figured that, okay, making a draw wouldn't be a bad result. And upon analyzing and thinking what to do, I noticed that against the Benoni of whole openings, Blagojević had several games, very unimpressive ones, that ended in unexciting draws. Now, he's a very strong positional player, and his repertoire, especially with the white pieces, is very well founded, very solid. But on the other hand, he is very, let's say, predictable in his choices. So these games, several games that I noticed in one line of the Benoni, indicated that even if some line wasn't bringing him much dividends, he would still repeat it, and, well, seemingly without much success. So there I got the idea that perhaps I can make a draw out of my preparation. So I set out to prepare. I have to say that what helped me tremendously in my preparation was that I had previously prepared the Benoni to play it with black, just to play it for a win, not for a draw. And I had already made quite a big amount of work in the opening, and that helped me cut down on the necessary work I had to do before the game. So with this mindset, I would like to show you the depth of my preparation, and then you can compare if, let's say, a Grandmaster like me could prepare this deeply, how more deeply the elite prepares. And I think it will give you a good idea of the tremendous amount of work that goes into opening preparation nowadays. So after d4, knight f6, c4, e6, Blagojević always played knight f3, the Catalan also being one of his preferred openings. And here the first surprise, the move c5. In our previous game, the training match that I mentioned, I actually played the semi-Slav. It went d4, d5 on move 1. It was an interesting draw. But here I went c5. And he was surprised, obviously, not expecting the Benoni. But nevertheless, he continued along his usual line. So he went d5, d6, knight c3, ed5, cd5, g6, and now he played the line with the h3 and e4. So he starts with h3. And when I was preparing the Benoni to play for a win, I in fact wanted to avoid this line that happened in the game. And what I prepared actually was the move a6 as an attempt to avoid the line that happened in the game. The threat is of course b5. So if e4, b5, and if a4, then the move queen e7. So stopping white from playing e4. White can play other lines, let's say bishop f4 and so forth, but this was less forcing and definitely offers black fighting chances. However, for this game, I decided to go for the, let's call it the main line, because I had a concrete preparation in mind. So I went bishop g7, e4, short castle, and bishop d3. This was Blagojević's preferred line against the Benoni. And here I have looked at many moves, but for this game I prepared the most topical move, and I think the only move that allows black to, let's say, fight for equality and most likely achieve it, and that is the move b5. A typical Benoni thrust. It's a pawn sacrifice because the pawn can be taken in two ways, but black depends on tactical strikes in the center based on the move knight e4 and pins on the file to get at least one pawn back. And now comes the critical moment. Now, if white wants to play for an advantage, there are two ways to do so. One is to take with the knight on b5, after which the best move for black is rook e8, attacking the pawn on e4, and after short castle knight e4, rook e1, a6, white has the choice whether to go back to c3, whether to go back to a3, whether to go queen a4, whether to take on e4, and I analyzed these in quite some depth. But Blagojević never played like this. So again, I was hoping that he wouldn't play it because that's a more critical move. Another critical move is simply to castle and allow black to keep this advanced two pawns in the center, b5, c5. Now black can decide to go c4, b4, or a6 with unclear play, but white keeps some chances for an advantage. However, again, noticing the psychological profile of the opponent, he sticks to what he has played before, even though the previous games had not given any reason for optimism. He simply took with bishop b5. This is the safer choice, but also it's the safer choice for black too. So now knight e4 is the tactical trick that black employs to get the pawn back. Knight takes e4, queen a5 check. So there is a check and the bishop is attacked. So knight fd2. Of course, if knight c3, bishop c3 is the idea, and black will regain the piece. So knight fd2, queen takes b5, knight d6, queen a6, getting away from the attack and attacking the knight, and now knight 2 c4, because the queen also prevents the white king from castling. So knight 2 c4 blocks the f1 a6 diagonal and allows for short castle. Knight d7, short castle, and now knight e5. The alternative is to go knight b6, but in my analysis I concluded that knight e5 is the stronger move. And now all that you're going to see was part of my preparation. I have actually cut down on some of the lines because there were many more, not to burden you too much, but the lines I'm going to illustrate, being part of my my preparation for the game, actually will give you a good understanding of how deep opening preparation goes these days, and likely much deeper. So knight e5, knight takes c8. If, for example, knight takes e5, simply queen d6, knight c4, queen a6, again attacking the knight. And after something like knight e3, bishop b7, black is obviously without problems. He's a pawn down, but the pair of bishops, very powerful bishops, means that more likely than not, he will regain the pawn. Let's say something like rook d8, attacking that pawn, maybe bishop d4, bishop e3, and that pawn will be regained, or simply play for compensation thanks to the fact that white finds it difficult to develop. So knight c8 is the main move, rook a c8, knight takes e5, bishop takes e5. And now white has a choice. He can go bishop h6, queen f3. I've looked at all these moves. And there is also one trick in the position, which I wasn't hoping I would get in the game. That is if something like queen c2, thanks to this attack on the rook on f1, black has the very cute tactic bishop h2 and winning an exchange. He went for rook e1, rook fe8. There is also queen d6, but this is more precise. Bishop g5, and now bishop d4, a precise move. Taking on b2 would be bad. This is also something that I knew during the game, because after the forcing line rook takes e8, rook takes e8, d6, we see the danger that black faces in this line, and that is the strength of the passed d-pawn, and in this case supported by that bishop on g5. After bishop takes a1, d7, rook b8, d8 queen, rook d8, queen, king g7. It may appear that, okay, black survived and even is a pawn up, but after bishop e7 turns out that the king is in danger and black loses. Therefore, taking on b2 is not very good in this position. So I played bishop d4. And this is a sort of a critical position. It's move 19 by now. And I was playing a tempo basically. I will tell you which was the new move for me in the game. It's a position where white has a choice. And what I considered critical here was the move rook c1. And I will show you the line that I have analyzed. Before that, just to show you some other lines, for example, bishop e7 appears strong because it threatens d6, but thanks to the tactical defense, bishop takes f2, king f2, and rook e7, thanks to this double attack of queen f6 after rook e7, queen f6, black regains the pawn, and it's at least equal because white's king has been weakened. What I considered critical was the move rook c1, and now I will show you a really long line which was part of my preparation. This is move 20 and it goes up to move 36, so I will show you what I was looking at. So rook a takes e1, queen e1, bishop b2, rook d1, queen d6, blockading the passed pawn, queen e7. So what white is trying to do is remove the blockading queen and then free the path for the d-pawn. Queen e7, bishop e7. Now the threat is d6, d7, d8 winning, so rook c7 is the only move. Now, for example, in case of d6, rook d7, the pawn is well blockaded and black will play something like f5, bishop e5, king f7, king e6, and eventually will get that pawn. So white can't advance, he goes bishop d6. Now you see why I considered this line critical, because here black is still on the defensive and needs to be precise dealing with the threat of the supported passed pawn on d5. So rook c8 now, rook b1, bishop f6, rook b7, attacking the pawn on a7, c4, but black also has a passed pawn to advance. Rook bishop a3, making sure that the pawn never promotes. Rook d8, going after the d5 pawn. Now rook a7. If white pushes d6, there is bishop e5, and there will be a liquidation to a rook endgame. After rook c7, bishop takes d6, bishop takes d6, rook d6, rook c4. We have a drawn rook endgame. So rook a7, rook d5, check on d8, rook d8, otherwise there is bishop f8, if king g7, bishop f8, so rook d8, queen, bishop d8. Now it's move 32, but I still continued my analysis because I needed to make sure that I just don't lose this pawn on c4 and I end up with a pawn down when white has a outside passed pawn and a winning position. So I had to analyze that I managed to get my king to the center. So the line goes, let's say, king f1 or f3, basically similar, f5, king e2, king f7, bishop b4. This stops, let's say, king d2. There is this check preventing king c3. Or in case of king e3, there is check on b6 preventing king d4. So bishop b4 stops the check, but black is just in time. King e6, and after, let's say, a4, king d5, the centralized king makes sure that there is no danger to the c4 pawn and the a pawn can be controlled. Similar line is in this position, for example, f3, f5, king f2, king f7, king e3. The threat is king d4, so this must be check. King bishop b6, king d2. The threat is king c3, again check on a5, king c2, king e6, and again black gets to d5 with a draw. So this is move 36, and this is the line I actually had to analyze and remember in my preparation. But you now understand why I thought this was critical, because it required very long, precise play on my side. Had white played like this on move 20. So going back to that position after bishop d4, that was the move rook c1. But he went rook b1, okay, defending the pawn on b2 and setting a small trap, because in this position I can't take on a2, because after d6 we again see the strength of that pawn, threatening d7 and let's say queen a5, counter-attacking the rook on e1, but bishop e7 is quite strong, and this is again some sort of a dream scenario for white in this line. So I went queen d6. Again, this was still preparation, so I looked at rook b1 as well, queen d6, attacking the pawn on d5. This construction of pawn on c5 and bishop on d4 is very important in this line of the Benoni, because it cuts away the contact between the queen on d1 and the pawn on d5. So queen f3 defends the pawn, and now a small tactical trick that I also prepared, that is the bishop b2, regaining the pawn, and also at the same time making the c5 pawn a passed pawn. And it was in this position on move 22 that my opponent played a move which was new to me, which I hadn't analyzed, but one which I managed pretty easily to diffuse, because I had analyzed something similar in another line. What I analyzed were the moves rook e4, for example, rook e4, queen e4, bishop e5, rook c1, and now f5, queen c4, and bishop d4, again erecting this construction of bishop on d4, pawn on c5, and thanks to this very good control of the dark squares, black's king is not in danger, and the pawn on d5 can be attacked, for example, if the bishop leaves the g5 square. Another move I analyzed was the move the moves g3 and g4, both of them leading to similar positions. For example, g3, take on e1, bishop e5, queen e4, now f6, defending the bishop e3, rook d8, going after the pawn on d5, f4, attacking the bishop c3, rook c1, and now bishop d4. The point of luring the rook to c1 is that now after bishop d4, c4, queen d4, there is queen a3, attacking the rook and attacking g3, and after rook c3, queen a2, thanks to the exposed position of the white king, black manages to obtain enough counterplay by giving checks, and at the same time also attacking that pawn on d5, which is enough counterplay for a draw. This is move 30, by the way. But let's go back to the game. He went bishop f4. From another line, and this was new, so I kind of started to think to verify the variations, but not for too long. I knew that I had to play bishop e5, and now the point is that after rook takes e5, white will regain the exchange, but the further simplifications will only guarantee the draw. So for example, if something like queen g3, there is rook c8 defending the rook, or in case of bishop takes e5, queen takes e5, rook b7, threatening queen f7, simply rook c7 neutralizes that threat, and after rook c7, queen f6, intending to use the power of the passed pawn. Black also reminds white that he has a passed pawn himself. c4, and after d6, queen b6, d6 pawn is pinned, because the queen on f6 would hang, and black will continue with c3 when there will be an exchange of the c passed pawn for the d passed pawn with a drawn queen endgame. So after rook e5, he played rook d1, supporting the passed pawn, but now simply rook c8, reinforcing the rook, threatening rook e1 in the process, bishop e5, rook e5, queen d3, and I played h5 and offered a draw, which was accepted. So 26 moves the whole game. The new move for me was on move 22, so I had to play 4 moves alone on my own in this game, for which I spent only 12 minutes. That was the time I spent on the whole game, and achieved the objective of making a solid, carefree, problem-free draw in a team match, playing against a strong opponent. So this is the type of preparation that is in a way ideal for the player, elite or not, when they want to make a draw with the black pieces. But obviously it's not always possible, because not always the opponent goes for these type of forcing lines that are susceptible to this kind of pinpointed preparation, where you can basically prepare a lot of forcing lines, hopefully memorize them, and then just execute them over the board. But in this game, I managed, and well, turned out well. So sometimes it pays off to have a really good opening preparation with a lot of forcing lines, and to have good memory to be able to execute them over the board. But as I said, it also depends on the opponent and their choices. So this is what Grandmaster preparation is, and okay, this was my preparation, and I tend to be well prepared, whereas I think that the elite actually add a lot to this type of depth that I showed you in this game. So I leave it to your imagination to figure out how well prepared they are and how many lines they have to memorize when preparing for a game. Another point worth mentioning is this was in 2011. That's already 13 years ago. And in those 13 years, I can assure you that the amount of variations one has to memorize has increased tremendously. And it has become even worse, much worse, or better if you wish, than this. And what people have to memorize today is simply incredible. So I will conclude on this to leave you either elated or depressed on the state of modern preparation. Up to you to decide. So I'll thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Check out my Substack newsletter. Subscribe to that one as well. Every Saturday you get a short essay on chess related topic and also a video that is in a way, some way connected to that topic discussed in the article. So thanks again, and well, have a good weekend if you watch this on a Saturday, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Take care.